All right, welcome back to the AM podcast with me, Coach Jason, talking all things adaptive fitness. I'm joined here today with Jess Silver. So, Jess, thanks for joining us, and please
Thank you,
introduce
Jason, for
yourself.
having me. I'm very excited to be here. I've known you for probably about 3 years now. Um, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm an adaptive fitness personal trainer myself, based in Canada, as well as being an adaptive athlete and founder of a nonprofit organization called Flex for Access, which is focused on delivering opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport promotion. So in terms of an introduction, I guess you'd like me, Jason, to give everybody an introduction as to how I got to being in the field of adaptive fitness, I presume, and why I'm passionate about it and what I do. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a avid sports fan. I've been an avid sports fan since the age of 5. Avidly following basketball. My favorite sport is basketball. And my other favorite sports are soccer and tennis. And I very strongly relate to professional athletes. I've always looked up to them and admired their journeys of physical preparation and mental preparation. But the reason why I very strongly relate to them is because I was born with cerebral palsy, which is
Mm.
the most common neurological condition that babies are typically born with. And for those listeners who may not know, it's a brain injury and it affected my ability to walk independently. And I use a wheelchair as a mobility aid and can walk with assistance and weight bear with assistance. Um, but having these limitations and, CP limiting my motor functions has not stopped me from becoming so passionate about movement-based approaches to management of CP and specifically adaptive fitness. So I became very passionate about adaptive fitness over 12 years ago now when I found myself training at a high performance level at a gym and really realized that it changed my life. And I now am in a position where I want to create those same opportunities for individuals like myself. And Jason, you and I have had the pleasure of working together over these last several years to focus on education and advocacy for individuals like myself and also fitness professionals like both of us, to educate fitness professionals who are both focused on adaptive fitness as well as those in the mainstream about what adaptive fitness is, why it's important for fitness professionals to engage in at the mainstream level, and how they can do so, and to really close the gap on opportunities, sorry, for individuals who are part of special populations, and to allow those opportunities to take place within the mainstream.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've known each other a few years now, and it's been a roller coaster ride in the past few years. So you've been, an adaptive athlete from the beginning here. You mentioned like being really into sports, even, from a young age.
Yeah.
So, and you're up in Canada, but are you like an NBA fan?
I'm a huge NBA fan. So, like I said, basketball is my favorite sport,
Mm.
and the NBA is my favorite professional association to follow. And I follow every team, not just our Toronto Raptors, but every team in the States. Some of my favorite teams are the Los Angeles Lakers and the San Antonio Spurs.
Mm.
Um, they have been my favorite team since I was a child, and I also follow Golden State, that has Steph Curry, and most of the teams that have really interesting players to watch, and those players who are very dedicated to their sport and fitness regimen. So I mentioned also being a fan of tennis, and
Mm.
my one of my favorite tennis players of all time is Novak Djokovic. And Jason, I don't know if you know a lot about Novak Djokovic or you follow tennis at all, but one of the reasons why I love Novak is because he actually has talked openly about how he focuses on meditation and mindfulness as being central to his fitness journey. And that's something that's really important for me. So if you want to talk about sports, we'd be here for hours, and I can talk to you about, almost every sport out there. And it's really my passion for sport that shaped my own passion by extension for fitness and my understanding of biomechanics as well. So as I mentioned, I'm an adaptive fitness personal trainer as well as being
Mhm.
an adaptive athlete. The listeners on here can't see my biceps, but I'm flexing my biceps,
Yep.
and I'm very passionate about, training every day and moving my body every day and focusing on mindfulness and meditation and my mind as it relates to my physical performance, similar to the way that professional athletes at a very high level do that every day as well.
Yeah, it's a great point, because training is not just physical. A big part of training is mental, so
Right.
that mindfulness and, it's really important, especially, since I work with kids, I work with teenagers, they're not the same as adults, you have
No.
to know who you're training and working with mentally. And that brings up the kind of the other side of the coin from the fitness, strength training, coordination training, the physical side. We also have the coaching, right? So
Mhm.
that, you work on your mindset, you work on your mental training, not just your physical training.
Yeah, and then another very important component of training, as we know as fitness professionals and those who, find themselves working in the field of sport, is another facet of that is also nutrition, right?
Yeah.
Because if one is not feeding our body with the right food and supplementing the body appropriately, then you cannot expect to see the same benefits from training as you would when you're eating a balanced diet, when you're prioritizing mindfulness, when you're working on multi-plane movements, and everything works off of each other. So it all has a compound effect. And that's something that, when I also work as a guest lecturer at universities and colleges here in Canada, all over the country. I've done a lot of work virtually since we've been, facing COVID over the last 4 years. And now we're emerging out of it, hopefully stronger. But a lot of the work that I do is also as a guest lecturer, and I teach at universities and colleges, and I work with faculty and students. And something that I talk about is that compound effect, the uh, compound approach to care and to health and to fitness is so important for individuals who are part of special populations. When we talk about special populations, for all the listeners that are on here of this episode, we're talking about individuals who have physical or intellectual disabilities or whose disability may be, multifactorial or both
Mm.
in nature. And it's important to have a compound approach where they're not just getting their fitness programming from one professional, let's say, or their medical advice, and directives from one clinician or practitioner. It needs to be open to many practitioners and professionals to really address complex issues that individuals who are part of special populations face. And also, as professionals, we need to realize that every individual changes, but then also individuals who are part of special populations, like myself having cerebral palsy,
Mhm.
as we age across lifespan, our needs, because of our condition, if it's a physical condition, as it is in my case, change as I age. So
Mm.
that's really important also to recognize, and to recognize that you need to tweak your approach to health and fitness, across lifespan. And because of that, get the expertise from various professionals all working together to really achieve progress and have the most optimal, highest standard of health as possible.
Yeah, well said. Well said. This is a lifestyle, right? So it's not just about lifting weights or shooting hoops or whatever it is that you're doing, and it's so much better to live that healthy lifestyle instead of trying to make up like after you get sick, now all of a sudden I got to get healthy real fast, because I'm gotten sick, I'm not feeling well, I've gotten diseases like diabetes or obesity or whatever else, like people are struggling with all sorts of issues. and especially, mental health issues as well, anxiety, depression, and
Yeah.
so on. But now you've got, we know movement is medicine,
Yes.
but it's not just movement, right? Food is medicine, sleep is medicine, right?
Yeah.
So you got to balance all these things together to
Yeah.
really be healthy and strong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
Exactly.
that's something that, I've been doing since I was pretty much I would say, because when I was born, my parents were given the diagnosis of cerebral palsy, that I would have cerebral palsy. They just didn't know exactly how it would affect me.
Mm,
They knew that it affected my frontal motor cortex, and but they didn't know when I was born if I would be able to speak, if I would be able to feed myself, if I would be able to cognitively understand and process information. And I was told that I probably shouldn't think about going to university. And now I laugh because
yeah.
I went to university, graduated from an undergraduate degree in English literature. Then I went on to get my master's degree, and then I got a postgraduate degree in medical communications. So a lot of it is to say, and Jason, you know this, I'm sure, working with, youth and adolescents that have varying degrees of disabilities and challenges. Often the expectations that are set for us are very low by society and by clinical professionals, when parents are given a diagnosis, as I've said. But it's also really important to note that every individual is different, and we all develop differently, and we all learn differently. And something that I was blessed with is I was blessed with a family that never told me that I wouldn't be able to accomplish whatever it is that I set my mind to, or they didn't raise me as being different from my sibling that doesn't have a disability, a
Mhm.
visible disability or a disability of any nature. They just kind of said, yeah, your life is going to be more challenging because of the physical challenges that you have, but go out there and do everything that you want to do, and you have to work hard. And that's the lifestyle, and that's the mindset that I've adopted, both for fitness, for my fitness journey, and for my own personal life and everything I do. And now being an adaptive athlete and adaptive personal trainer, fitness consultant, and the founder of Flex for Access, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. I talk about that all the time, where we may be given a diagnosis, or a defined society may have a defined notion or preconceived notion of what it is that I myself as an individual with a disability can do. But what's important for professionals to realize is that may be true, but they also have to be open to realizing that every individual is different. They have to give an individual a chance to thrive. And as a fitness professional, we have to open ourselves up to being creative, working with special populations, and realizing that they can reach and exceed their potential if they're given the opportunity to and the right tools to.
Yeah, exactly. That's very powerful stuff there because, you made sure and your family made sure that your diagnosis was not your destiny,
No,
right? You weren't just locked in and, set with those low expectations, right? Because that's what we're doing, because now we're both coaches and trainers. So, we're working with other people who are on their own journey. And it's really important to, even if you have some challenges, you have some disabilities, whatever it is, like everyone's an individual facing their own set of circumstances,
right.
but you can still achieve, right? You can achieve your own goals, right? You're not stuck where you are. You're able to level up.
And what's important, and I've heard the phrase level up in like the last week, like about 3 times with different professionals that I've spoken to on podcasts. And it's interesting. And that's something, that I think about all the time. And I don't just think of leveling up myself. I always think of, this is what I want to achieve, but now that I've achieved this, how can I go even further? And
Mhm.
being the founder of a nonprofit organization, something that I always look to do is, how can we have a greater impact? How can my organization have a greater impact? And I just wanted to say before we get into your next question or point, Jason, that for fitness professionals, I think it's most rewarding. I hope you'll agree with me, working with special populations, that knowing that, the clients you're working with will always present you with a different set of challenges and circumstances. But as a professional, what's most rewarding is we then have to tap into our skill set and our creativity and our, knowledge base that we have and say, okay, this is the knowledge I have, but I also have to not be afraid to take my knowledge a step further and maybe working with my client and their support system, realize how I can evaluate the knowledge I have, but how I can also push my client further. Um, you know, where they may know how to do something already, or they may be used to working with one professional before, but I may present them with an opportunity that they may not have had before. And I always talk about that with other fitness professionals and collaborators that I work with through my organization, saying that you shouldn't see working with individuals who are part of special populations as overwhelming. Rather, you should see it as an opportunity to make yourself better as a fitness professional. Why? Because it's more challenging and you're actually going to learn more, and you're going to allow your client to thrive in unique ways that other professionals may not have the opportunity to allow them to do so.
Yeah, it's a great point. As trainers, coaches, like any sort of, teacher and instructor, like you learn a lot, from working with adaptive athletes and kids, of all abilities. It's almost like a little puzzle, so you're like learning and, seeing what kind of challenges you can come up with. You're hitting these goals. What are we going to do now? And everyone is different, like you said, when you were born and got a diagnosis, like your parents didn't know what that was going to look like,
Mhm.
right? So for, you know, kids out there, adults out there, with cerebral palsy or, other people, it might be they're on the autism spectrum or something like that. That diagnosis doesn't really tell you everything,
No,
about
it
what they're
doesn't.
gonna do,
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to get to know them as an individual and see,
yeah.
where they're at and where they want to go.
Yeah, and what's important to also note, as I mentioned, is through lifespan, as you get older, and even like when the kids are small, and also then when they approach their teen years, there's a lot of change that happens. And then like for me now, I'm in my 30s. And there's a lot of change that happens in your body when you're in your 30s, and then add into that I'm female. If we
Mhm.
want to talk about how complex health is, there's also hormonal changes that happen in your 30s that affect your health and fitness as well. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, and I know that you understand, Jason, is that, fitness and health is complex for everybody. And then working with special populations, there are changes and factors that influence the way that an individual can engage with exercise and health and fitness promotion, that are even more complex. But it's not an opportunity for us as fitness professionals to go, oh, wait, you're too complex, therefore I'm not going to work with you. And
Mhm.
I'll share with you, I'll let you in on a little secret that one of the reasons why I'm so motivated to do what I do is because of the fact that throughout my life, I had interactions with some health professionals, not going to name any names or, point to any organizations, who told me, oh, you're not going to be able to do this, or, oh,
Mhm.
it's too challenging to work with you. Therefore, I'm not going to be working with you. Find your way. And I could have sat back and said, okay, what do I do now? I'm discouraged and I don't want to do this. I was told I can't do this and therefore I'm just going to accept it. But I didn't do that, and it's driven me my whole life. What's driven me my whole life is not stopping and, being resilient and facing adversity and finding different ways to tackle my challenges. And now as a adaptive fitness personal trainer, And as a fitness consultant and also the founder of my nonprofit organization, I'm in a position where I'm educating other professionals like yourself, Jason, along with other, professionals and governing fitness bodies to learn about how to work with individuals who are part of special populations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's such a need for it. I think it's kind of something it's not always talked about as much. It's just like only in certain like special circles, but I think the need is greater than we realize,
Yeah.
to include more people with all sorts of disabilities, physical disabilities, obvious disabilities, ones that are not so obvious, and so it's just great. Now you've got this nonprofit that you've mentioned here. Tell me a little more about that.
So I founded Flex for Access in 2017 as a registered nonprofit organization. Prior to that, it started out in 2015 as a social media awareness campaign. It's my baby. I founded the organization, founded it out of the realization that opportunities for adaptive fitness and also the awareness specifically of cerebral palsy didn't exist from an informed perspective for mainstream society. When I say informed perspective, what I mean is that individuals in society may have heard of CP, but then when they meet an individual like myself who have the condition,
Mhm.
and this happened to me many, many times and still happens to me. I use a wheelchair as my mobility aid, and when people see me in a wheelchair, they automatically assume, oh, you can't do very much, or oh, you broke your back. I got this
Mhm.
one many times
Mhm.
when I was in the gym. You
Wow.
broke your back, you're paralyzed. What are you doing
Right.
in a gym? And
Yeah.
I said, well, if you knew a thing or two about CP, you would know that I'm not paralyzed.
Yeah.
And to answer, what am I doing in a gym? I'm in a gym to exercise just like you are.
Hmm.
I just may be exercising in a different way or need certain modifications. So Flex Fair Access was founded as a registered nonprofit organization in 2017. It's existed as a nonprofit organization for over 6 years now, and the organization is focused on delivering opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport within the mainstream. So all funds that are raised go towards facilitating opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport within mainstream fitness-based settings, fitness or recreational-based settings. So the funds actually facilitate adaptive fitness-based training sessions for clients, where I work with fitness professionals like yourself who have businesses and they have clients who need financial support to carry out their fitness-based training sessions. The funding goes towards that, as well as towards the purchase of adaptive fitness-based exercise equipment. The organization has raised over $20,000 since we've existed, and we're looking to continually amplify our impact through raising awareness by having individuals hashtag photos of themselves on social media where they flex their bicep or are engaged in fitness-based programming, whether it's adaptive fitness or mainstream fitness, using the hashtag Flex for Access to raise awareness and redefine how physical disability, so not just cerebral palsy being one of the disabilities, but
Mhm.
we've now expanded to focusing on other disabilities as well, is understood, and then creating opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport within the mainstream.
Excellent. Excellent. Exactly. So, there's so many different, disabilities and special needs, to include. So it's great. You got to have some more experience, opening up, working with different populations, making sure they're included, and you really learn, so much from doing that. Like we were saying, there's different types of cerebral palsy, there's different disabilities. I know some people, they use orthotics as well, as they might have like ankle orthotics,
Yeah.
something like that.
I actually, up when I was in my teens, I had what are called AFOs, the ankle foot orthosis.
Yeah.
And I used to walk with a walker with assistance. And one of my goals is to still be able to use a walker. Because my balance is impaired and I also have scoliosis secondarily to my CP, which is
Mm.
a curvature of the spine. It further impaired my balance. So I'm not able to use a walker independently, but I am able to use one when I have somebody close by assisting me
Mm.
and kind of holding the walker to make sure that I, won't fall. But yeah, I actually did use AFOs as well for a number of years, and I will share that they aren't the most comfortable things out there, but they're necessary to help correct
Yeah.
gait because for individuals who have CP, the way that CP affects most individuals is that it affects our gait pattern. So the way
Hmm.
that we actually position our feet when we're walking or moving our feet. And then because a lot of individuals who have CP also have what's called spasticity,
Yeah.
which is involuntary tightness or higher muscle tone. In some cases, it's so interesting speaking about talking about the differences because even in CP, in some cases, tone may be spastic where it's higher and the muscles are tighter. And in some cases, individuals have low tone and they're not able to hold themselves up at all because of low tone. So it really
Mm.
varies again to go back to that point.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a difference. You gotta know what's going on there. So
Yeah.
that's a great point. So I'm not sure about this part, since you talked about your journey here. So were you um doing work with a physical therapist? And so tell me a little about that. Or like, did you get to like graduate and then, are you like stuck in the world of like trying to play sports or like, because now, I think of adaptive fitness in one sense as kind of like a bridge for something that goes beyond therapy, right? Because
Totally.
you could
Yeah.
do therapy, you can't really do therapy forever, but of course, it's not like they're going to cure you from cerebral palsy, but they're treating you. Then you graduate. But what is that next step? I think that's important for a lot of people.
And yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. And that's exactly kind of my story. I found myself doing conventional methods of therapy from the time that I was a baby, very early on doing what's called in Canada early intervention, where you were working with physical therapists and occupational therapists, in some
Yeah.
cases, speech therapists. I didn't need speech therapy. Um, but in some cases, individuals do. There you go. Again, speaking of differences. And I was doing that for many years, on and off, very rigorously when I was younger. And I was engaged in a method of therapy called conductive education. I'm not sure if you've heard of it
Oh.
or if your listeners have. Um, but I call it boot camp, and it was actually started in Hungary. And what it was very rigorous physical therapy, but it's not the physical therapy that we know of here in Canada and in the States where, it's gentle and it's focused on movements that only will work with the individual's range of motion. The
Mm.
physiotherapists are very careful not to go outside of that range of motion, not to risk any injury. The conductive education was basically, let's teach these kids how to move independently as best they can, by putting them through 8 hours of very rigorous and intense therapy, um, and splinting their arms and legs if we need to get them to be straighter. And we had to
Wow.
also crawl on something called a plinth, which was like a wooden table, basically like, when you think of tables now, you think of like a massage table or a therapeutic table. But this was made of wood, and they would make us work on functional movements, such
Okay.
as rolling over and like lifting our arms and our legs and moving in different planes in different positions on these wooden plinths. And
Wow.
we would do this work in all different planes for 8 hours a day. Um, and that's something I did from the age of 8 myself. I started my own journey with conductive education was started when I was 8 until 14 I did it.
Wow.
And that was the most life-changing and shaping therapy that I did because it was so rigorous and intense. And the therapists who they called conductors, because it was called conductive education, right? Where the therapist conducts you through a program, which is why I
Okay.
think they called it that. Um, it was very rigorous, and I really learned the meaning of no excuses and no quitting during that time.
Yeah.
To mention that I also had to leave my other family. I went to this camp. They organized it as a camp uh, in the summer, and I went to this camp for a month. One summer we did 2 months with my mom, and we left my dad and my sister at home behind, and my grandparents. Everybody was at home, and we went up north. It was like, I want to say 3 hours north of where I live in Toronto.
Wow.
And we went there and we stayed there for 2 months or a month. And so one of the other reasons why it was really challenging was because I had to leave, my friends that I made in school, and that, so to speak, normal, I hate to use that word, but routine life that your other friends have to go
Mhm.
into this therapy. But I'm also very grateful for it because it taught me a lot about mental toughness and physical toughness. And I was really able to achieve a lot of progress. That's where I learned how to walk um quite well, actually, at the time with a walker, even though I needed assistance.
Mhm.
Because I also have subconscious fear, which is part of CP, and it affecting your central nervous system. It's subconscious. It's not conscious that I know that I'm going to fall, and that's why I'm afraid, but
Mm.
it's subconscious. Um,
Mhm.
Through that work, I was able to break through a lot of that. And I also during that time walked in what many practitioners would call parallel bars, but they would actually make us do it in ropes so that it would be unstable and we'd be holding on to these ropes and actually walking on you're understanding why I
Yeah.
call this boot camp now.
Yeah.
Walking on rocks barefoot. Um, and
Okay.
that really helped also target proprioception, which is the awareness of our body in space, which is also impaired when you have CP. So that's all to say that when I was younger, I did a lot of therapy. My parents and I very strongly believe in Eastern medicine. So I've done a lot of massage therapy, and
Mhm.
also have gone to chiropractors. And over the years, um, I work with a chiropractor who I've known for 20 years, and I have found it helpful for my scoliosis and back pain that I have. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of therapy, but it wasn't until I turned 16 and I discovered my gym, and I made contact with the owner of my gym here in Canada. And I really realized that this is the place where I'm going to take charge of my fitness journey. And I didn't know at the time that it was going to change my life, but it did. And this is what led me on the path that I'm on now. But it's all of the experiences culminated that led me to be where I am today.
Wow. Gosh, what a journey here. I had no idea about that, intensive boot camp version of
Yeah.
therapy they gave you. I mean, they really got you outside of the comfort zone
Oh,
with
yeah.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why now when I train at a high performance functional fitness level and I work with my strength and conditioning coach who you've actually met when
Yeah.
we've done virtual events, he puts me through very rigorous programming. And my trainer at my gym, my former trainer at my gym that I worked with for 10 years, really cut me no slack despite me having cerebral palsy and having my challenges. And I
Yeah.
think that you will say also, correct me if I'm wrong, but working with your clients that you work with who are part of special populations, just because they have disabilities doesn't mean you give them the easy way out with programming.
No.
Um, and so that's what the type of work that I do, because I know you were going to ask me about my training regimen now. The training regimen that I do is very much focused on functional movement, So movements such as squatting, movements such as planks, push-ups, leg lifts,
Mhm.
really utilizing my body in all planes. So my trainer and I do a lot of work on a fitness ball, where we do a lot of Supermans. Supermans are, for those
Mhm.
listeners who don't know, an exercise where you're lying, the client is lying in a prone position on their stomach on the ball, and you lift your arms straight out.
Yep.
Uh, you lift them straight out and then you go in, like retract them inwards. And at the same time as moving your legs often, or lifting your core. We do a lot of strength training um, with weight and with resistance bands. And for those of you who don't know, and obviously that's all of you because I'm new to your listeners, Jason, is I at the gym could do a seated row that was almost triple my body weight.
Oh,
So my,
man.
my goal of my PR or PB, personal best, of a seated row at the gym was 135. Once upon a time, could probably, you know, do even more than that now. And then on a good day, I also can do over 25 strict pull-ups. And strict pull-ups
Whoa.
are my favorite exercise.
Very cool. Yeah, that is a lot. So, you're able to, you're doing exercise where you can get it down on the floor for some of them, like you mentioned, push-ups and using the stability ball or fitness ball, yoga ball,
Yeah,
whatever, and that Superman exercise, which is one of my favorites. It's great for a lot of people need to, work on that. It helps, with your posture and people forget. Sometimes we think about like I'm working on my core and we always think like I'm doing crunches or curl ups or something, but there's a lot more to it. So this is like another way to strengthen your core, especially the posterior
yeah,
muscles, right, on your back side there.
yeah,
And yeah, exactly. And sometimes, I'll even call it like the Iron Man, because it's a little more modern, like for the
yeah,
Marvel fans out there and the Avengers and whatnot. So, you're flying basically.
yeah,
You got to hold your arms up, you got to hover
yeah.
and fly, So
Yeah,
Superman
and
is what they call it. I call it the Iron Man sometimes.
yeah, and then I also do, I also incorporate chest flies into my
Yeah.
program, chest presses, a lot of, I started using the kettlebell for like holds, holding the
Mm,
kettlebell at my side while I'm sitting in my chair or on my bed to balance. And kettlebells are hard for anybody to use, for balance. So I like doing that, and bent over rows either with dumbbells or with kettlebells. So my programming that I do is very much varied, and it varies, from day to day that I do my program on.
yeah.
And then when I work with my clients, I'm not sure if this was going to be a question that you had for me. But I typically do the same where, I get a sense of their goals, and what they were used to working on before, and what they wanted to work on or what they've never worked on. And what I love to do best as a trainer or as a fitness consultant is to challenge the client or the fitness professional to understand that just because they haven't done this before doesn't mean that they can't do it. Um,
Mm,
so for example, when I was recently training a client who had CP who was affected on one side of his body more than another, he was very apprehensive of doing banded work with a resistance band with the
mhm.
arm that was more affected by his CP. Because he said to me, Jess, I can't even open my hand. How are you gonna expect me to do a seated row or work on mobility drills when I can't even really open up my hand and use my fingers?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to work with you so that I train you to be able to hopefully, have more mobility in your hands and open up your fingers. So I really started to break that down with him. So it's really a matter of getting to know your client really well and also taking that risk personally to challenge yourself to say, okay, I'm going to be the one who's going to help this person learn how to do something they've never learned how to do before.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, think about how powerful that is, right? After he has that experience, like, oh, actually, like, it's not just abstract, like, here's a thought about what I could do or can't do, or that'll never happen, where it's just all talk, but really you got him to do it. Right.
Mhm.
So then once the clients are starting to do things that they previously didn't think they could do, that changes them on the inside,
Exactly.
mentally, right? They build
Then,
confidence.
because then they become empowered, and
Yeah.
now they're, to use a word like, you hear a lot of high performance athletes use, when they're hungry for wins, that's when clients become hungry to see their progress and they become engaged in the programming. And that's what we want as fitness professionals. And something that I strive to do through Flex for Access, which is my nonprofit organization, is to continually raise awareness of adaptive fitness and to empower fitness professionals, whether they work with adaptive athletes or special populations, or they're working in the mainstream, to become part of campaigns that we have to fundraise for the organization and also educate. So I know, Jason, you wanted me to talk a little bit about that
Mhm.
and some of the events that we have upcoming or campaigns that we have upcoming for Flex for Access. I'm actually really excited because I just launched a campaign this week, at the beginning of this week, called InnoFlex, where I really wanted to have fitness professionals and collaborators, who are strength and conditioning coaches or anyone who's involved in the industry, as well as those who are voices related to health governance, for example. So those who have a voice when it comes to policy, developing policy, to
Mm.
get involved, where we would have posts that would be created from now, so from the end of February to the to April, where all of the individuals who would participate would create videos where they would talk about what innovation to them related to health and fitness and adaptive fitness means, and post these videos. And then at the end of April, make a donation to Flex for Access, which is the nonprofit organization. But the goal is to have messaging from fitness professionals and those that have a job that's focused on health governance or policy to come together to talk about adaptive fitness and what they want to see changed related to the field of health and fitness, to have a stronger voice and to create a larger impact. And then the funds that are raised go towards Flex for Access. And I'm also really excited about another campaign, which we're going to be launching in March, called the Move, Inspire, Adapt campaign for
Mm.
March 25th for CP awareness as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. For anyone who doesn't know, CP Awareness Day is coming up. And what I believe we're wearing green for CP
Wearing
Awareness Day,
we're
right?
wearing green, and the goal is to have as many, and I'm wearing green today.
Yeah.
Um, Not by chance. It was done purposefully, because I knew what we were going to be discussing on the podcast. We are wearing green. If you'd like to wear green for the entire month of March,
Hmm.
to support CP awareness and support Flex, that would be great. But what we're looking to do um, with the Move, Inspire, and Create Change campaign is to have individuals post a workout once a week for the month
Hmm.
of March, wearing green when you're working out ideally, and then post videos of the workouts and also discuss what adversity means to you and what you want other individuals to know about adversity and about adaptive fitness or fitness in general. And then on March 25th, or throughout the month of March, if you'd like, donate to Flex for Access via www.flexforaccess.ca or via e-transfer
Hmm.
through the email. Or Jason can share the email
Hmm.
in the show notes. And the donations go towards creating opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport promotion.
That's perfect. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to the campaigns, CP Awareness Day. I think it's just helping to kind of shift our culture when it comes to adaptive movement. adaptive fitness in general. I think things like this are critical, especially I'm excited about how your campaign's going to be helping other trainers expand their practice and open themselves up to the possibilities of working with other adaptive athletes and, people with disabilities and special needs. I think that is really going to change the game for everybody, opening up more accessibility.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
we're excited to have you be part of Flex Praxis's work. I know we're also going to hopefully be collaborating on a series of webinars as well that are going to be done where fitness professionals can also register um, for these webinars. And again, your registrations would be donations towards Flex for Access. And
Mhm.
Jason, I'm really grateful to have you be one of Flex for Access's collaborators and to be working together. I always look forward to the opportunity to talk to you, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities to learn from each other. I know that you and I have had conversations about me learning about your uh gamified approach to adaptive
Mhm.
fitness as well. So looking
Yeah.
forward to that and looking forward to working together more.
All
Thank you
right.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you for coming on. And just one last time, where can people go if they're curious, they want to know more, they want to know about the nonprofit? Where do we
Yeah.
send them?
So we send them over to www.flexforaccess.ca, FLEXFORACCESS.ca. Again, the organization is based in Canada, but anybody can donate across the US. And
Mhm.
the funds go towards facilitating opportunities for adaptive fitness and sport promotion, as well as for the purchase of adaptive fitness exercise equipment. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully, Jason, having a lot of your network join our webinars for the adaptive fitness education and fitness education in general. So not just for special populations as well.
Absolutely. All right. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again for coming on. This was a blast.
Thank you. And as I say, stay strong and flexing, everyone.
Right on.
Thank you for listening.